What's up everyone? Today I'm doing Valentine from HackTheBox. This was an easy Linux box created a couple years ago by Mr. Ben, and it features the infamous heartbleed bug. After our initial nmap scan, we run it again with a heartbleed script that we find in user share nmap scripts, and we see that it's vulnerable. We use gobuster to enumerate the web server, and we find an RSA key in a dev directory, and heartbleed leaks the password. This gets us onto the box as the user hype. For root, we look at the bash history file and hijack a leftover tmux connection. So let's get started. Okay, we start this box off with nmap, sv, sc, oa. Put it in the nmap directory, and we will call it Valentine, and the IP address is 10.10.10.79. I've already run this, so let's take a look at the output. And we can see port 22, 80, and 443 are open. So let's take a look at the web server. And we just see a picture. And if you haven't seen this logo before, this is the heartbleed logo. And essentially what a heartbleed is a TLS SSL issue that dumps pretty much more than it should back to you if you ask it to do so. So this is a big hint along with the box name, so we can check for that. But first I'm going to get gobuster running. So we'll do gobuster dir -u and the URL, or the IP 10.10.10.79, and the word list we want to give it, which is user share word list dirbuster directory list 2.3 medium, and we'll let that run. So coming back over here, we can test for heartbleed. If we look in user share nmap scripts, we can see all of the scripts that come with nmap. These are all nmap scripts. So if we look and search for heartbleed, we see that there's a script given to us by nmap that can check it. So we'll just run nmap with the script. The IP address, which is 10.10.10.79. The port we want to run the script on, which is 443. And we'll output it as nmap heartbleed. So we'll let that run. And it comes back pretty quickly and tells us that it's vulnerable. So looking at searchsploit for heartbleed, we get a few results back. A couple Python scripts. I'll just grab this one. We'll copy it into our directory with -m for mirror, and we'll move it to heartbleed.py. Now if we try to run it, it gives us bad interpreter because of the control character. So we can change that with Unix to DOS, or DOS to Unix. And now if we run it, looks like it's going to run. So we just give it the server. So we'll just run heartbleed and the IP address, which is 10.10.10.79. And we get a lot of output back. So we'll do this, and then we'll invert grep for this because we don't care about all that information. And it looks like we get back a bunch of info, and looking at the information, we get a string that looks like base64 and a file that says decode.php. So grabbing this string, we can see if this base64 decodes to anything useful. With base64 decode. Actually, I'm setting it as a variable, and then so when we echo it, it'll just send it back to us. So we can just send that to base64 minus D for decode. Interesting, it didn't like it. So if we take this, maybe we need to put it in quotes. And if I can spell this correctly. Oh, it still doesn't like it. So I'm just going to try to copy it again. Okay, and there we go. So that was, I must have copied something incorrectly. Looking at it. I'm not sure what I missed. But the output looks like heartbleed, believe the hype. And that could be a password. I'm going to put this into our notes. And looking at our notes so far, I just have the name of the box, the IP address, and the stage we're on. And so we've added this. I'm going to come down here and say that server was vulnerable to heartbleed. Use searchsploit. Got base64 text. Decoded string is this. So we'll save that, and then heading back over to gobuster, it looks like we have two directories so far. We have dev and index. So we can go look at index first, and it looks like exactly where we're at. And then looking at dev, looks like we have notes.txt and hype key. Looking at notes, coffee, research, fix the decoder, and that was what leaked us the information. As we can see, decode.php. Don't use the decoder until any of this is done, and find a better way to take notes. So coming back, looking at the hype key, it looks like we have a bunch of hex. So I'm just gonna grab this URL, and we can save it with Ctrl-O hype key and the URL. Now if we look at it, it's just a bunch of hex. So we can try to revert that with xxd minus r. And you can see that we only get a little bit of the line. But if we use minus p, which I think is for PostScript, I believe. Our plain output PostScript and continuous hex dump style, also known as plain hex dump style. So if we use minus p, it's just gonna do all of that. But if we did minus r, minus p, we get all of the text. So that looks like an SSH or an RSA key. So I will put this into, we'll call it hype key .rsa. And then we can try to SSHN as hype, since we now have a password and a key. So we'll SSH with the key. I think I is for identity. Hype key.rsa. First I need to change the permissions to read write, nothing. And then we can SSH in with the ID. And the IP address is 10.10.10.79, and we're gonna try to SSH in as the user hype. And we'll need to go grab that password if it asks us for one. I'll copy that to my clipboard. It's taking a second. Okay, so enter the passphrase for the key. And it looks like we're in as Valentine. So looking at the home directory, we see user.txt on the desktop. So and that's user.txt. So from here, we need to escalate to root. We can start our usual enumeration and see if we can run sudo without a password. It looks like we can't, so we can try the password that we have. And it didn't work, so that's out. We can see what groups we're in with groups. And it says hype, cd-rom, dip, plugdev, and sambashare. That could be interesting, maybe. So we can check mounts, which is mount, and then look for anything samba, anything that has the word samba in it. Or we could just run mount and see what all's mounted. And we don't see anything too interesting. So from here, we can look at files in the home directory. We see pulse cookie, profile, some bookmarks, dmrc, bash history, which does not point to dev null, so commands that are typed are recorded in bash history. So if we cat bash history, we can see a bunch of commands that were run on the box, and it looks like this person was running a tmux connection. So looking at all the processes with ps aux and then looking for anything tmux, we can see that this same command, the dev session, is actually running as root. So looking at dev session, I'm assuming that's what that stands for. We can see that it runs as root. It's owned by Hype, which we are a part of, and we have read-write permissions on that. So we can probably run this. And this drops us into a shell. And who am I? Root, and the host name, Valentine. Looking at root.txt. And we can read root.txt. So that's pretty much the box. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys next week.